A couple of years ago I made a video showing how to take apart and put back together and install window roller bushings in a Ford Probe. Now that was these, is what I was making at the time and using, and now I've decided to go to ones that are very close to stock. So this is made as the stock bushings were made. And in this video I'm going to show you how to install them, where to install them, and discuss how to adjust the window, which hopefully if you've got stock windows, stock bushings, everything's in the stock position, you'll replace the bushings and everything will go back together nice and cleanly, where it's put you back to where it was when stock. If not, knowing how to adjust the window will help you out tremendously. So my previous bushings that I was making were made out of nylon stock, and they fit fairly decently in here. A lot of extra room. So they would slide up and down, give you a little bit of play in there. But mostly the biggest point was to have this center section nice and tight so it didn't give you that left and right play. So if you didn't have left and right play, you would at least be mostly good. So these have a lot less play in the track, which is a good thing. Now this track here that I use to check everything is a very tight track. So when I'm checking fitment with this one, if they fit in this, they're most likely going to fit in your track. The factory had two different bushing sizes. Now let's talk about the factory track bushings positions. On the motor track, the large bushing was at the top of the track, the small one was at the bottom. On the free one, the large bushing goes on the bottom of the track, the small one goes at the top. So just remember, your big one goes on your motor at the top, goes on the bottom of the free. Okay, so once you get your window ready to come out, you'll want to take your new bushings, check your track that you want to put them in, and just make sure they actually fit and slide and move easily. If they don't, they need to be shaved down a little bit. So these are moving just fine. These tracks are nice and big. So if they don't slide down on the track freely enough, some resistance is okay, but basically freely enough, it may be too big in diameter, it may be too thick. These can be trimmed with a razor knife. If it's too thick, you just kind of shave out just a little bit all the way around, pop it in. If it's too big around, you just go out here on the outside, start shaving off a little bit as you go around, to where it'll slide right down in that track. If it's not sliding mostly easy, it's probably going to be too tight. And you want to do that with it dry, not re-greased, just so you can check and make sure that it fits good dry. You want to grease these things before you put it back final back together. You want to make sure you've got grease down this track to make these things last longer. The least favorite method to put these on with is a hammer. Now I put this one on already, tried to shoot it. I didn't get everything in frame very well, so I'm going to reshoot it and show this one doing this method. So now we've got the bigger diameter one, because this is the front one that's on the track without the motor. Small diameter at the top, large diameter at the bottom. We're going to get this one on here. Now you'll note this needs to be this direction. So when you put your socket in here, and we're going to use a 6mm socket, or whatever in your set will slide into this, kind of easy enough to get in there, but the quarter drive is the size that'll go on this pin and let it slide down on. So we're going to make sure that we have this the correct direction, because that is very important, because once you get it on, they don't come off, hence the reason why I'm not redoing that side. So we're going to take the socket on the ground, and we're going to set our drive socket. This is a 9/16. It fits nicely over this, so that when you're driving it, this socket will fall into it with that out of it. That's why it's deep. And we're going to have to hammer this, and it's going to take some force to get this to take it down all the way. So some of this is better, some of it's not as good. That's why this is my least favorite method. And as you can see, it takes a lot of force to get this to pop over. and I like applying slow force to it to get it to work instead of a lot of quick force. Well, that's still not wanting to go over. Let's see if we can get it to go here. And as I said, that's the reason why I don't like this method, is because it's so hard to get that to go down with the hammer. Getting it on here is kind of a little better, but not fully. Now you're going to use another socket that's got a, enough of a head here to work, but 1/4 inch drive again, because we're working on this back of the pin to make sure it doesn't get pushed down through. So we want that supported when we go to hit our piece down on. And this window's been done a few times over the years, so it's taking a little bit extra. So we're going to do the same thing. We're using the socket on. We're going to line this up on the bottom here. We're going to hope this is catching this bottom pin real well, and we're just going to hammer it right on down. Check for fitment. Make sure it kind of spins a little bit. It's not going to spin very easily, but you should have at least some movement in there. It should move a little bit, and giving an extra hit once that socket is out to make sure you're fully seated is a good idea. You'll notice it's not going to always give you a nice clean look, but we're in there. Second method of installation for these is using a vise. Now, some vices move a lot better at force than others. This one is very hard to turn when it's got force on it, so it takes a little bit of effort, but it's the same methodology as before. Okay, so we got our piece lined up. You may have to use a hammer to knock this into place. We open the vise up enough, drop this into place, and start cranking down the vise. Make sure we kind of lined up nice and straight. Everything looks kind of good and safe. And then we use our hand to keep it from shooting to the side, because that can happen. You don't want it to fly out and hit you in the face, or hit your camera in the face. So we just slowly run this down, make sure we keep it straight. And then when we get down here toward the bottom, that's where it gets hard to turn. But the constant force approach puts these down a lot easier than the quick hammer approach. Oops. Every once in a while, if you see something going a little off angle, you're not centered enough, it's not a bad idea to reset and recenter. Keep our force going kind of straight, as long as it looks all nice and straight, and there it's on. Okay, so now that we've got our socket line down in here, we're going to take our point that it's going to go into, we're going to put it directly against our vise, so it's on the side there, and then we're going to set our socket up. We'll close our gap down to where it's going to catch, holding everything kind of into place. Okay, so we've got a little bit of tightness there. Let's get everything situated. Oops, I'm not high enough. Okay, I gotta go back out. I want to make sure that you're in a good position on your vise where everything's caught in a good spot. You don't want to be bending your stuff. So we want to make sure we're all nice and straight. Everything's in a good position. It's hard to keep it into position until you get it tightening down. Okay, let's get it into position. Now, it's going to be helpful to hold this separate. Make sure you're getting everything in the right position. We don't want it to slide out of the unit while it's going on, but we want everything to be in place as it goes in. That's why this is not the preferred method. It's better, but it's not the best. Okay, so constant pressure points. Get everything lined up. Everything's looking good. And we're just going to turn this right on in. And now it's all the way down. Okay, so we pull this apart. Our socket was trapped in here, comes out. Our piece is nicely on. It's even flipping. So that's a better method than the hammer. The hammer might be quicker, but this is safer. Okay, so my favorite method is to use a press. This is my preferred method because you can get a constant force as you go. So this is a drill press. Hydraulic presses work great as well. If you watch my other video on how to do this, I used a hydraulic press that I made myself in that. So again, we've got to get our socket down in our hole. And this may be a case of using a hammer to get it started. So once you've got your piece started in, then you can drive it with your socket on down just the same as every other method, but you'll notice this is an easier push. You just slowly ease it down, add more pressure, and away it goes. Right on down on there. So now we've got it down, we've got it set. Then we can bring our part in, make sure you've got the right size for the right point. And we set this up. We set our socket back under it because we want to make sure we keep this pin held up separately from the rest of the piece. We don't want to bend the rest of the metal here. So we set our stuff into place. Make sure we're nice and straight. Make sure everything's in place. And we can just drive this right on home. And then check to make sure you're well driven. Okay, so the socket falls out of the way. And we have a nicely set up part. So as I said, this is the preferred method. If you've got a drill press, a press of some kind, hydraulic press, works great. The other methods work, it's just this one works the easiest. But we have our bushings all installed and ready to go. We can come back to our car before we put this back with the window. Make sure these fit and slide nice and smoothly down these tracks. Okay, so once you get it all put back together, come in and make sure your mirror track is set in the right spot, and then bring these down in to their positions. Get them to start catching down in the holes. Use yourself down. See if it looks like it's right, and in this case it's not. You can see I have got these a little tightened in the wrong position, so we just take a 10mm in here and loosen them up, and they should release enough to slide themselves into the proper positioning. Okay, so that should okay. Now the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to break your piece, which I just broke. So this is a hazard. These things can break, so I've got to fix that in a minute. So make sure you've got those out of the way when you're pushing this up and down. But as you can see, we're in, we're out, everything's sliding happy. And a very important step, do not forget to lube your tracks. So take a lube, make sure you get good lube in here, and lube away. Now, that wasn't enough. You want to make sure your track gets really well lubricated, especially at the top where you're going to slide that down through. You don't really want it at the very, very top because you're going to make a mess, but you want to make sure your tracks are well lubed to put your stuff together with. Oops, I got that caught. So making sure your track is well lubed, both sides, all around, so when your bushings slide through, they get lubed. Grease saves them. They last longer that way. You might, once you get this back together, find this window is just hitting the wrong spot as it goes in the door jamb. back side's up, front side's down, up, or something where it's just not leveled out properly. Now on the initial thing, that's re-loosen these, try to reset it, make sure it's going up and down properly. That's probably where your adjustment is. Your stops here make your final stop position at the top. So this is your main adjustments here. These are your stop positions. So now that I've re-loosened that, you can see I can actually move the window around a little bit just because these are loose. So we bring our door to shut position, check our alignments, see which way it is, and get it as straight with the rest of the car body as we can off this door. Got it, looks like a good alignment here, mostly good alignment there, maybe a little bit more that way. Everything looks pretty straight. So now we're just gonna tighten that back down. And now for the fun. We have a window that goes up and down the track nice and smoothly. Doesn't really jam around too much because that's moving everything below. Comes right up on in and closes right under the door jamb and seals up. So as long as you're getting yourself set in a good position, you're good to go.